Hey, everybody, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us for our event today. My name is Meg Alexander. If anybody needs a visual descriptor, I am a 37-year-old white woman. I have purple and pink hair, wearing a white t-shirt and blue glasses. Now, as we go through for today's event, I just want to say hello and welcome to anyone who might just now be joining us. If this is your first Power to Fly event, then hi, we're so happy to meet you. Now, whether today is your first Power to Fly event or your 50th, the next couple of minutes here will be especially important. Might be a little repetitive for you, but it'll absolutely get you the lay of the land and tell you what you need to know about today's event. So the biggest thing for Power to Fly events is participation. All right, these events are entirely about you, about our community members, and we want to make sure that you all get the value that you came to get from today's event. So you are encouraged to participate in any way you would like. You can chime in, turn your cameras on to share your smiling, maskless faces with us safely. But truly, y'all, there is no need to be Instagram perfect, okay? We don't care if you're coming to us from, the corner office or your living room couch. You can be in a three-piece suit or your bathrobe. It makes no difference to us. Now, as you are joining us, you're welcome, like I said, turn on your cameras, but if you don't want to, that's okay. You don't have to participate that way. You can always chime in the group chat. We would love to hear from you, so please feel free to keep that hopping. Now, I do want to encourage y'all to share in the chat. I know Ria has started to chime in here. Let us know where you're joining us from. I'm always really eager to see how far the global audience spreads. And so I would absolutely love to find out where all y'all are coming from. I'm coming to you currently from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I don't know whose land I'm on right now, apologies, but I usually broadcast from Toledo, Ohio, and that was land that belonged to the Fox, Kickapoo, and Potawatomi tribes in my area. So if you do know, you're welcome to shout out where you are around the country or around the globe. And if you know whose land you're on, you're welcome to share that as well. Now, the other thing I want to remind y'all about is that we are recording today. Now, what that means for you is you don't have to take notes. You get to sit back, relax, enjoy the conversations that I'm about to have with our Vizient team, and not worry if you missed a reference that someone listed or a resource or something like that. So no worries. Now, what that means for all of you, in about 3 to 4 business days, Power to Fly is going to send out an email to all the registrants. So whether you're able to join us or not, everybody's going to get an email from Power to Fly, and that's going to have a link to where you can rewatch this recording when it goes live on powertofly.com. Now, we are that can take a little bit, obviously. So let's say that you hear something today so mind-blowing, just like paradigm shifting. You can't wait to share this with a friend or a relative or coworker. You don't have to wait the 3 to 4 business days. You are always welcome to head over to our YouTube channel. We're actually streaming there right now. Hi, YouTube. And you can head over to our YouTube channel. The recording is usually posted within a couple of hours at the end of the live stream, so usually by end of day. And there's a big section of our recorded chats are on that as well. There's a little archive of some of our greatest hits, if you will. So I really encourage you to check out YouTube. But honestly, y'all, even if you start sending out the YouTube link, don't forget about the website. That is where a real value is. We've got a ton of free resources that y'all can take advantage of. So I very much recommend you check us out on the website as well. Now, like I said, please feel free to ask questions, write info in the chat. We would love, love, love to hear from you. I'm starting to see some of the chats coming in. Let's see, we've got Frederick, Maryland, New York City. Oh, we've got another person from Ohio. Hi, Ria. Absolutely loving to seeing all these people. Thank you so much, y'all, for chiming in. All right, now, the other thing I want y'all to know is our code of conduct. So I'm gonna just show this briefly. I think most of us are familiar with this, but basically what it boils down to is just don't be a jerk, and as always, we just wanna operate from a place of kindness and respect. All right, now, as we go into our session, we are gonna be talking with Jennifer about Vizient. Now, Vizient is an amazing company. I'm gonna let Jennifer give you a little bit of an info on who they are and what they do, but they're one of our newer partners, and I am incredibly excited to get to know more about Vizient as well as about Jennifer. Now, Jennifer Lind is joining us as a speaker today, and Jennifer is a passionate advocate for the corporate social responsibility sector, or CSR. She currently leads community impact and sustainability at Vizient, which is a healthcare performance improvement organization. Now, as the Senior Director of ESG and Social Impact, she leads strategy, program implementation, and ongoing support for the company's corporate social responsibility and sustainability work. Now, Jennifer volunteers her time with causes across Dallas, centered on community building with causes such as Jubilee Park, Community Partners of Dallas, and Crossroads Community Services. On the weekends, you can find her renovating her home with her husband, Brian, and their 2 children, Sunny and Julian. Jennifer, welcome to the stage. I'm so happy to have you join us. Is there anything else that you would like our audience to know about you before we dive into questions today?
I think that bio covered it all. I'm joining us today from Chicago. So I'm normally based in Dallas, but today I'm in rainy Chicago.
I was going to ask you what it's like, because you're like equidistant between, I'm in Philly and I'm based out of Ohio. So you're like halfway to home for me.
Yeah, it is rainy and cold. A little too cold for me personally.
Yeah, not loving that for you. So yeah, I'm glad that we're doing this inside today. It gives us a little excuse to stay warm and snugly. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. So I'm trying to think if there's anything else I didn't call out, y'all. Not being in my own office is like somehow throwing me in a way that I did not expect. So
I agree with that.
Yeah. All right. So as we go, don't forget, if y'all have questions that you want to know the answer to, please feel free to ask your questions in the group chat. I will be, I'll have eyes on target there the entire event. So please feel free to ask questions there. And then at the end of today's event, I'll share a little bit more info around Vizient and what you should know about applying to open roles with them, all that kind of good stuff. So, all right, Jennifer, to kick us off, can you tell us just real quick what your journey to Vizient was like, and what really led you there? What was it that interested you about the company and led you into your field?
So I had an idea of how, like, what I wanted to do. I didn't know how I wanted to do it. So I knew I wanted to change the world. Like, the verb for me was so easy. Like, I knew I wanted to change the world. I didn't know the leading part into that and like how I wanted to do that. And so I actually started out in teaching high school at a Title I school in Dallas, and students were getting on the bus at 5 a.m. to make it to my class. And, you know, as anybody in a field working towards betterment, I mean, I wanted to do more. So I moved into the nonprofit space and moved into consulting and just have gotten further. I call it the ripple. So, you know, you're creating this ripple of those doing good. And I've just gotten further and further away from the ripple to where at Vizient, I'm working with others who are going out and creating their own ripple of good. And so I found Vizient through, I think, Best Places to Work. Like, it was a top 100 best places to work survey. And I was just looking at companies in Dallas because it's really critical to me that I'm doing good both through the offerings of the company as well as in my job. Like, I need that blend of purpose and passion. And so Vizient was kind of like a no-brainer. And I'm glad they've lived up to it because I've been at the company 7 years now.
That is so cool. Well, here's the thing. Like, I never understood this when people would tell me these things, right? But like, once you do find that place that fits, especially when you connect with the mission or like even just like the value system of the org, it's completely different. And it's one of those things that like I kind of thought was a bunch of corporate double speak, kind of just ridiculousness until right, like until I experienced it, right? Because like I'm not like a career person. Like I make a living and that's great and I love my job, but like that's not the focus of my entire life. And so I kind of thought that's maybe why I didn't have that feeling, and that's okay. But I'm telling you, once you find it, it's bonkers, y'all.
Yeah.
All right. So one of the we had a lot of questions that we got in today. So what we did, y'all, just to give our audience members a heads up, we collected all the questions that y'all asked at registration and tried to group those in, and we're going to try and get to as many as we can. But if you have a question and you took time out of your day to be here with us, we want to reward you for that. So if you have a question that you'd like us to ask it in the chat. If you submitted a question and you're not sure if we're going to get to it in time, ask it in the chat. Maybe you want us to go in deeper on terminology or, you know, literally anything. please, please, please ask in the chat. My whole job today is to make sure that you all get value from today's event. So tell me what you want to know so that we can deliver for you. All right. There were a lot of people had questions. Obviously, we're talking about parenting post-pandemic. And a lot of the questions revolved around establishing healthy boundaries. Now, this is a much bigger, 3 small words for a very large idea. This person had asked specifically, with the increased caution around illnesses and daycares, how do you navigate unexpected situations where your child needs to stay home, but you have work commitments? Do you have any strategies for managing this balance effectively? So let's talk about this. What is, can you give us a baseline of, the age of your kids, what parenting during the pandemic was like for you, for, what your experience was like?
Yeah. So I have 2 boys until they tell me otherwise. Sunny is almost 4 and Julian will be 2 in a couple weeks. And I have like the best partner and husband who like really takes it seriously, and like the mental load that comes with being a mom, which is amazing because obviously I'm here sitting in Chicago this week. My husband is sitting in Texas with our 2 children. They go to daycare, but like it is an active parenting style when one parent is out of the house. But
he's
I
not
think
babysitting his own children. Yeah.
exactly. And I'm very quick to correct that when they're like, but who's watching your kids? Like their father's watching them because their father. But, but it's, I think,
the other adult that helped make them.
yes,
Shocking. He's
50%
helping care for
of their DNA is watching them. But I think the like shove into parenting that happened during the pandemic, like there was no greater risk in establishing that boundary early on. And just like exposure level at Vizient, I was working in what was considered our war room, where like we were quite literally activating field hospitals for hospitals, and we were pulling in like traveling nurses for hospitals because they didn't have coverages in their ER. And I was coordinating our donated supplies. So at the time, Ford was manufacturing these face shields because they were union. So people were coming into the plant regardless. They stopped manufacturing cars, started manufacturing face shields, and I was getting those out to hospitals. I'm sitting at home 8 months pregnant, and I'm hearing on calls, this hospital's running out of saline. New York City needs more morgue trucks. I mean, just like things that you could really get in your head about. And so day 1 of Sunny's life, it's like my boundaries are so firm, so set that it's almost like because I'm seeing the parallel universe. Yeah. Whereas like in a traditional coming into the world moment, you're like, okay, do you have your whooping cough shot? No kissing my baby's face.
Wash your hands.
There's like, and wash your hands. But it's like his grandparents didn't meet him until he was 5-6 months old. I mean, it was, and quite literally, and I joke with my husband this, like I would push him in front of a train if it meant protecting my child. Like there's no chance for anybody else. And so I think that was like such a firm mama bear moment that those boundaries kind of like I gained more confidence in setting boundaries, because I mean any therapist will tell you setting the first boundary is the hardest one, right? Yes. And then you kind of get more comfortable and you're like, I feel better with this boundary. And so right now, like one of the boundaries I have at work right now is I am not online from 5 to 7:30. Like my kids are home and they are first. And if it's an emergency, like absolutely, I will be open to that. But most of the time it's not an emergency. And so if you need me to do something, I will get online when they go to bed. But that's not a normal occurrence. But I see, like, as a woman at my level, as a white woman, I have like a duty to showcase those boundaries at every opportunity so that others may follow. And not to be arrogant in that, but like, so for example, your question about like, what do I do when daycare closes or my kids are homesick? So I don't hide my kids. Like I don't try to showcase a life that I am not living that day. So if my hair is in a bun and I am not in makeup, I don't try to pretend like my life is otherwise that day. I call it aggressively authentic.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah. But like I try to show up and I'm making sure I'm authentic. So for example, my team speaks on your first day of work at Vizient. Like we tell you about all of our community programs and how we commit to community and commit to the planet. And I have had to lead that session, and I have had a toddler in my lap leading that session, because that quite literally was what my day looked like that day. And I'm not naive and pretending that I can get as much done that day as I normally could, because that's
Oh
not
yeah.
what it looks like. But the way my husband and I structure the day, and I think we found really good rhythm in it, unfortunately, because Texas closes for freezes. And a couple of years ago, if there was a COVID exposure in your classroom, the classroom shut down for 2 weeks.
Oh yeah, it was
And so
serious.
it's like we had to get into a routine, through
Mhm.
sheer force. And so the way we structure it is one of us is up early in the morning and we're able to get some work done. And then we stagger the day, literally like a 9 to 2 and a 2 to 5. Normally during nap time, we can both be online. Sometimes I won't say that happens all the time, but we take that 9 to 12 and 2 to 5 like pretty seriously, where you are removed from the kids, you are away, and the other parent is clocked in. And then whoever worked that morning, they are on that evening, and whoever worked, didn't get to work that morning, they're catching up in the evening. So I mean, it's not perfect, but not by any means. And if honestly, the audience may have tips I could use. But I think like prioritizing showing up in your like as authentically as you are comfortable, it's
Mhm.
like what has been key for me. um yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I do want to invite y'all to weigh in the chat if you would like to. You are always welcome to contribute to the conversation. Full disclosure, I don't have children. My husband and I are child free by choice and incredibly likely to remain that way. But my friends are starting to have kids. And so this is a subject that I feel very passionately about, despite not being part of the demographic, because I see, you know, friends that I've had for 15 years and then see like how their life changes after they have kids. And then I'm starting to see how that's then impacting their work, right? And so I think it's something that we need to talk about, especially in this post-pandemic era. One other thing that you said really early on that I didn't get a chance to highlight for everybody is that you said, I have two sons until they tell me otherwise. I'm gonna cry, and I'm not supposed to cry at work. So like I'm gonna try and keep my emotions
All
on lock.
emotions are good.
But that is a beautiful way to word that. Thank you so much for sharing that
uh,
with us. That was
I read
wonderful.
it somewhere, so I cannot take credit for that language, but yeah.
Same here. Find something good and pass it on because like
Uh-huh.
I love a good phrase. So I think that's
Yeah.
wonderful. All right. Okay, now I do want to get some chime in from the audience too. So please let us know, were you parenting and co-working stuff during the pandemic? Oh, and that's the other thing. Jennifer, I meant to ask you, was your first child born during the pandemic or did you already have a child?
Yeah, Sonny was born 3 months into the pandemic, so we had about a week that we didn't know if he could be with me. My husband could be with me during delivery. And so my mom quarantined, like no grocery store, no anything like that. Cause I mean, this
Mhm.
was July
Oh
2020.
yeah.
Um, and so we had my mom quarantined just in case my husband tested positive and he couldn't be with me. So it was like a unique, but not that like you should back burner empathy levels for yourself. We didn't know any different. We had never
Oh
had a
yeah.
normal childbirth experience. So I think in a way that was a positive thing because I didn't know what I was missing out on. Um,
Yeah. That's a
but
really good point, right? I feel like that's one of the things I've heard this before too, that like the the thing that the picture that we have in our heads, like the mental image of how something's going to turn out, is usually wrong. And it's really easy to like kind of hurt your own feelings that way or be disappointed. But you're right, like it is a little bit of a benefit that you didn't have patterns established at
yeah,
all because you weren't parents yet.
mhm,
I think
yeah,
that's great.
yeah,
Yeah. I mean, and there were a bunch of people that, parenting pre-pandemic or otherwise, a lot of people that affected their jobs. I mean, Ran is chiming in the chat saying they had to leave workforce due to pandemic and parenting. So it's a real serious thing.
yeah. Hmm.
Um, all right, let's talk a little bit about productivity and focus because this can be really hard. Um, as a parent, how do you focus effectively to really optimize your productivity? Because you said there's certain times of day that are just not going to be working for you and your family to work,
Mhm.
especially when you're trying to balance the childcare responsibilities with work demands. So how do you kind of keep yourself focused? What is your trick there?
I don't know that I have a trick, but I can tell you what I do. Um, I so my kids go to childcare, daycare from 8 to 5, quite literally. My husband and I prioritize doing pickup together. So that is something that like the last 15 minutes of the workday, we like almost decompress on the drive to childcare as like a connection for us
That's
before
nice.
these little feral beings enter into our world again. Uh, I joke that they're feral, but
I love
I
it.
think
I
it's a
joke that
really good
I'm a feral
descriptor.
ant because I'm, just
Yeah.
wandering free.
My
But
2-year-old
I love
growls
that.
sometimes, so it's like a really nice descriptor for him. But
Your 2-year-old sound like good people. All right. Sounds
he
like something
really
I'd want to
is.
chill with.
They're both very good people. But I'm very mindful to keep me focused. I'm very mindful of notifications.
Okay.
So I do not have Outlook notifications enabled. I don't have Instagram notifications enabled. I don't wear an Apple Watch. I like my phone's on do not disturb mode most of the time, unless it's my daycare center director, my husband, or my mom.
Mhm.
And that's really it, because I think it is so easy for me to be like, okay, distraction, like birthday party invite coming through or whatever that may be.
Mhm.
I refer to it as diluted focus. Um, and I will break up tasks where I know 30 minutes is about like a normal period for me to be like deeply focused on something, and then I have to move on to something else. So I think it's like blocking and staggering your time and being honest and calling yourself out and like, hey, I'm not focused on this. So I need to like change my environment or change where I'm sitting or change how that may look. Um, yeah. But
I
then I
like
also
that.
listen to this meditation like right before I end the day, before I go pick up my kids. And
Okay.
it's on Headspace and it's specifically for parents. It's not like your normal, like kind of fluffy meditation, because I tend to roll my eyes at that sometimes. Like there's
Yeah.
cuss words in it, and it's just very like, okay, the day may have sucked and you're about to take care of your kids, and like let's not let this ripple out. But I probably listen to that twice a week, give or take, when I have had a like less than uh you know, challenging day.
Yes. No, I think that's a wonderful way to do it. And honestly, that stuff is something that I do too. When I was lucky enough to go remote in 2019. So I'd been remote for a year before the pandemic, and that was a completely different experience, right? So
Mhm.
that was one of the things that we talked about pretty early on was like, hey, just because you knew how to do this like this doesn't mean that we do it the same way anymore. All of this stuff,
Yeah.
right? And I always thought it was really interesting how we kind of had to get real really fast, right? Because we got a little bit more of a window into what each person's world is actually like, instead of just, when you see them in your cubicles next to everybody else and you see everybody in that work context, right? And so I think it's really really good that we talk about this, not only so that like you can share tips with us, but also so we can, no, not me, but our amazing attendees can share
Mhm.
tips as well, like because there's so many different ways to do this, right?
Yeah.
And it's all really about finding what works for you and what is, going to make your day as easy as it can possibly be. Yeah.
Mhm.
Danielle is chiming in as well, saying, I've used Headspace too. They have lots of meditation and courses for parents and caregivers. Oh, that's where I was going with that story. Apologies. So I started in 2019 remote, and that was one of the things they said a lot was to basically to fake a commute, basically, to kind of give you that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so, like, sometimes I would, like, take my dog for a walk. It was always, like, a 10 or 15-minute thing, and either I would, like, take the dog for a walk or I'd go sit in the backyard, something that, like, was outside of the house because I was, spending
Mhm.
like we all were, spending all of our time indoors. Um, and so, that was something that really helped, and I love that idea of kind of bookending the day because if we are in a remote environment, we have the flexibility to do that, but you don't always think like, oh yeah, that's something that I used to do when I was in person that
Exactly.
actually was really good mentally, like,
Yeah.
for my mental health or for my like plan for the
Mhm.
day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
All
didn't
right.
even think of it as a commute, like as a to do it that way. That's such a
Well,
good, yeah.
that was the thing that struck me because they were saying like, don't forget, you need a commute on the way on the way to work and a
Mhm.
commute on the way back, because that was one of those things of like, all right, great, now I can not necessarily like rebuild those boundaries, but like, nope, this is my boundary. This is,
Yeah.
I'm walking across the DMZ of time. I don't, my analogies are getting a little bit fuzzy here,
I
but yeah,
follow.
you know what I mean? Like, give yourself that break. And it's really nice that y'all do this together, because then it's something that like is acknowledged that both of y'all need. A lot of
Mhm.
times we hear from parents where, I think this is changing, but obviously traditionally a lot of that extra work falls on the mom. And so I think it is really important that y'all both recognize, hey, we both need breaks in this because we are
Oh,
trying to be as egalitarian as possible here. So we both need to have that respect and
yeah.
that space. I think it's great.
Oh, yeah. Daycare used to always call me first when a child was sick until I had a conversation with them and said, hey, can you prioritize also calling my husband?
Yep,
Yeah.
I like that.
Because that sets a normal expectation for his coworkers watching his parenting experience. Like he didn't
Yes.
have a choice but to take every single minute of his paternity leave because he
Mhm.
had caregivers reporting to him that need to see that expectation followed through.
Okay, that was hugely important. And actually, you raised something like this earlier on too, and I did not. I got caught up in the rest of the awesome stuff we're talking about. But you'd made a comment about that, like as a white woman, it's especially important for you to model these behaviors. And I cannot agree more with this. Right? We have to utilize whatever capital we have, social or professional or whatever, and it is just as important for managers to model the boundaries or the self-care, the whatever that they want to see from their employees or their reports. But it's absolutely just as important to set that set that example for people who might not otherwise feel confident in being able to have that type of support, right? There's a
Yep.
lot of times where we've heard about, yeah, I went for maternity leave and that was fine, but coming back was a nightmare because, I had a mountain of stuff on my desk, like all these things. So I think
Mhm.
yeah, I love that we're continuing the conversation in these areas.
Yeah. And with my kids, I call it the cloak of privilege. Like you
Oh,
just like have this like
yes.
cloak of privilege behind you. And it is like your job to put as many people on the cloak as possible, like as you walk, you know?
I love this. Oh, I'm getting so many good
It
ideas
may
for
or
this. Thank you
may
so
not be
much.
a Harry Potter frame of thought, but yeah.
Hufflepuff all day. All right. Okay. A lot of people had questions regarding career advancement and job searching. All right. Um, do you think that there is a way to effectively communicate to hiring managers that while your kid is obviously a priority, that you are still a dedicated and hardworking professional, right? A lot of people hear like, oh, like you're a parent and you work from home. That just must mean that you're, watching Bluey all day and just having, I don't even know. I don't know what they're picturing, right? Like I've stayed home with my friends' kids while I'm working or while they're working. It's not joyous. So like I don't know where
Yeah.
employers are getting this. But when you're talking to people about a remote position and they are parents, what do you think is the best way to talk about this? How should employees think about this when they're going in and trying to talk to hiring managers?
Yeah, I mean, I really listened for their response when you ask somebody about themselves, like a manager in particular. Like, are they embedding personal elements into their about me? And then equally, are you embedding personal elements about you into your about me? And I understand from a safety perspective why that might not feel like the best choice for everyone. Um, I mean, when I have been in a comfortable position job hunting, I want a place that accepts me authentically for who I am. And so showing up as authentic as possible in those interviews is pretty key for me to ensure that like I'm finding a fit that is the best thing for me. Now, there is huge privilege in that. I mean, huge amounts of privilege in that.
Yeah.
And like you going into that company and then you being part of that culture and then you being the hiring manager, like you're embarking on this journey where you can like allow others on that cloak or allowing others to experience that same journey. But I think listening further about me, and are they embedding personal elements? Like, are they showing up as like with more dimensions of diversity other than their job?
Hmm.
But my like magic question in interviews, and I said this question has never done me wrong, never done anyone I know wrong, is at the end of an interview, I say, do you have any concerns about my ability to do this job that I could answer now?
If I
Best
wasn't on the
question.
road right now, I'd have my hot take fan and I would be waving that thing so hard because this is
Yeah.
fabulous. Okay, can you say that one more time, louder
Okay.
for the people in the back?
Ladder for the virtual attendees in the back. Um, do you have any concerns about my ability to do this job that I could address right now? And that is typically where like, can you balance the job with childcare? Or can you, and it just allows you to like be head on and like saying that. I mean, in the moment directly. And then honest, if they're like, no, then it's like, okay, so I'm perfect for the job. Like, great. Um, I
Awesome.
got the last time I asked that question, and I think it was at Vizient, like maybe one of the final round interviews at Vizient. They wondered if I was too junior in my experience to do the job. And I argued that I thought they needed somebody with a more innovative approach to the field with where they were on their culture journey. And I mean, it allowed me to like immediately address those questions versus that thought lingering in their head without having any actual response from me on it, you know? And then I tailored my follow up to that question. Like, and
Hmm.
here's how I can demonstrate why my work history is not, I think it was like I had 9 years of experience versus like 12 or something, like
Hmm.
something very minor,
Yeah.
just
Well,
needed to check the box.
like it's a 3 year difference, but it's also like the difference between I have 1 year of experience and I have 4 years of experience.
Mhm.
Okay, yeah, that's a large amount, but you're talking
Yeah.
like 9 versus 12. Not to say that there's not a lot of growth that you can do in 3 years, but like, yeah, I like that not only were you able to pivot it, but to, it's not really a rebuttal, but like address it in a way that focused positively on what you're bringing to the table as opposed to just mostly a lot of, well, it's okay. Like, I know I don't have this, but it doesn't matter. And here's why. And it's like, no, no,
Yeah.
no, no. It's not that it doesn't matter. It's that what you're at, like, no, you're focusing on the wrong thing. What you should be focusing on is here's what I can bring to the
Yeah.
table you
Hmm.
don't already have represented
Yeah.
in the room.
It's a really interesting question for panel interviews in particular, because you'll find that not everybody agrees with their hesitation on something. So they
Mm-hmm.
might be like, oh, I disagree with that. Like, I don't think that's a concern, or it's just a nice thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Now, I do want to chime in here, y'all. If you have any questions about this or you want us to dive in deeper, please feel free to let us know in the chat thread. I do see that Rand has chimed in saying that they're trying to navigate the job search now after that career break and have a lot of hesitation because obviously, balancing parenting and your career, I think anybody who's got more than two brain cells will tell you obviously it's tricky. It's not something that's super easy that anyone can do. So from this subject area, do you think that the conversation around working and balancing your personal and professional life, do you think that that has changed in the post-COVID era yet? Like we did see that big shift from like 2019 into like what everything looked like for like 20 through 22, basically. But as we are generally, at least in most of America, acting like this is not a thing anymore and everything's back to normal, are you seeing any more of a shift there as well?
I think return to office is hard when you're a caregiver.
Mm.
Um, Vizient is 3 days in office, unless you're a remote position. And it's tough. I mean, it's really tough because all like there is less time to do laundry between meetings and less time to dinner prep and less time to do a meditation commute. I mean, um, it's hard. I think what's key is there's still a window for opposition, like voices of opposition to things. And, you know, the policy may not be exactly what I desire or need, but there is capacity to listen to my opinions on that, which is
Mhm.
key for me. I'm not naive to think that I'm going to get what I want 100% of the time,
Yeah.
but working in a place that's at least open to hearing my opposition to such things, um,
Hmm.
you know, sits well with me. Now, we do have great flexibility when your kids are sick or school is shut down, and there is a lot of support there. Um, but I do think the return to offices kind of like shined a light that like these flexibilities existed during the pandemic, and they're maybe not quite as supportive post return to office as we would like for them to be. Um,
Yeah.
Now, from what I've seen with friends, I certainly still have it very good compared to friends in banking who are in 4 days a week or 5 days a week. Um, and
Yeah.
some days when my kids have, say, a Valentine party, I will commute home at 2 o'clock, work for a couple more hours, and then I can be at their school without having to like rush directly there. So, I mean, there's like opportunity for flexible behaviors, but I mean, it's all in like an authentic conversation with your manager. And I fortunately roll up to like a very wonderful manager who, I mean, is more than willing to support.
Yeah. Okay. All right. A lot of people had questions about like kind of setting these boundaries and how to maintain them. Can you tell us a little bit more about what advice you have for people who are trying to um, find a company where they can have a significant impact, but also still maintain that healthy work-life balance, right? Or work-life integration. I don't know about you, but we talked earlier about kind of connecting to the mission of the company.
Mhm.
And I have never had less healthy work-life boundaries than when I was A, working remotely, B, we're in a pandemic, so there's literally nothing else to do. And the world's on fire, and this feels like how I am helping, right? And so, working with Power to Fly, I threw myself into that, and positive for the cause, maybe not so positive for myself. And that was like a lesson that I had to learn. Did you experience something similar? Do you think that like is there any specific advice that you would have for people who are trying to figure out how to do this?
I think like first being honest with what boundaries you need. I mean, I want a lot more boundaries than I actually need. So I can't ask for everything. So being like almost like ranking which boundaries are most important to you. Mine is that 5 to 7:30 time. Like that is my most important boundary. Um, and then I have also prioritized asking in job interviews what boundaries my assuming manager has. Like, do they have boundaries at work? And then I think once you are employed somewhere or friends who are employed somewhere, like you owe it to be honest about what boundaries you do have. And it's like less of a taboo thing. Cause I think we get stuck in kind of this like vortex. Even I was at something last night and people were joking about the pre-read. They had to read at 9 p.m. before a meeting the following day. And it's like this like work harder mentality. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I try really hard not to buy into, um, or kind of like do the stacking comparison of like, yeah, but I read 50 pages at 10 p.m. Or, I think
Yep.
that can get toxic very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No,
I
I think
don't know if that's like the
that's
most helpful answer, but
no, I think it is helpful because it really does kind of show that a couple things, right? Building these boundaries as much as we can ahead of time is helpful because then you're not kind of in the moment and thinking, all right, I'm not loving how this is going, but I have no idea what I would like for this to be any different, right? So that scramble can make things even more difficult to kind of assert those boundaries or even identify what those boundaries should be.
yeah.
So yeah, I think this is excellent. Um, all right, let's talk about like work expectations, that kind of area.
Mhm.
Um, are there any strategies that you have employed to make sure that you are making your work expectations? How did you discuss these kinds of things with your employers? When it came to setting expectations for your job and how this is going to work as a working parent.
Mm. Um, since I became a parent at Vizient, I think it kind of naturally evolved. I've never entered into a new workplace as a parent. So
Mm-hmm.
navigating that with children already under my belt, I am not sure. but I have navigated under a few different managers at Vizient, and one of which I got while I was on maternity leave.
Oh, wow.
Mhm. I was terrified, obviously. I mean, like just getting a new manager, being what, 3 months late to getting to know that person after everybody else, prepping your team to report to somebody new while you were on leave. And I was onboarding a new team member at the time, so it was like a triple. Um, but uh, I think being candid and open and honest goes a really long way. And I am a firm believer that if you don't ask for what you need, it would be a pure coincidence if you get it. And I think parenthood actually gives you a lot of great practice in that. Like fundamentally, my husband understands things differently than I do. And so I
Mhm.
have to like very candidly say, I need this from you. And I think that has just like naturally translated into work. Um,
Mhm.
with my manager, I almost always start my one-on-ones of like things that are the highest priority for me that I need her eyes on. And then it can kind of like delve from there. Um, but yeah, I don't, another thing I don't have figured out.
Well, first off, who among us does? Okay, so like, I
Yeah,
don't think that you're going to
yeah.
find basically
I
anyone
would
that's
be
like, oh
worried if
no.
somebody did a little bit.
Well, I mean, if they honestly do, then like, I want to know why they're not selling the secret sauce, recipe or something like that.
I'll
That's what I
subscribe
would
to
want
their
to know.
channel, please.
Oh,
Um,
exactly. Yeah. No, I think you made you made a lot of honestly really great points in that. It is that clarity, right? Being able to, and part of that comes with time, and realizing like what you actually might need. But you are completely right, right? If you don't ask the question, the answer is always no, always. And so even if you are told no, at minimum, it's more knowledge than or more information than you had before. So that's, at least in my opinion, more information is generally a good thing. But the other part of it is you may not get absolutely everything you say you need, right? Like I need a private helicopter, $40 million, a new pair of sneakers, and a fresh cup of coffee. I'm getting two of those. I'm going to let you guess which two off the list. Okay. But again, now I have a new pair of shoes and a fresh cup of coffee. And if that doesn't make your day better, then I don't know what to tell you. Like
yeah,
do better, I suppose. But yeah, like it's one of those things that like, yeah, the $40 million would have been perfect, but I understand. So like if you are coming prepared at least somewhat with like, hey, here's what I need, it's a jumping off point. It's not a here's what I need, the answer is no, end of story, everything's rejected, blah blah. Like
yeah,
you have to be willing to ask those questions. And something else that I think you highlighted earlier is like listening to how the employer is responding to either your questions or how they are responding to the answers you are giving them, right?
yeah,
Interviews are a two-way street. You are interviewing that company just as much as they are interviewing you.
yeah.
So
And being
ask.
mindful that like as much as you think you're going to change the culture of that company, you need to be almost just as honest with how much the company culture is going to change you.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes. Guys, I've been doing this. I'm not kidding. It happens every single chat. There's always something new that I learned that I didn't know before. I've been doing this for 5 years. I've yet to hear that one.
Oh,
I
good.
love that. I
There we go.
love that. Oh, that's so great.
Yeah.
All right, we only have about 15 minutes left, so I want to make sure that we get through as many questions as we can. If y'all have questions that we have not gotten a chance to address yet, please let us know. Ask them in the chat, and that way we can bring you, value from today's event. All right, I want to take a step back a little bit and talk about your role with Vizient. Could you tell us a little bit more about what your role entails? What people should know about getting into ESG or environment and social governance,
Mhm.
and a bit of its impact, especially within the healthcare sector.
Yeah. So I have the best job. I mean, the best job at the company.
I mean, I'll fight you on that, but I'll hear you out. I'll hear
Okay,
you
the
out for your
best job
explanation.
at Vizient. How about that? There
Perfect.
you go. I can say that one. My team is the best team. I mean, like I could I refer to them as my bosses most of the time, because like it is like we work so well and function with one another. But okay, so ESG, like broadly, is an acronym that just indicates non-financial performance indicators. So we're talking things like supplier diversity and AI codes of conduct, and like how transparent are we with policies? So it's like basically, are we a good citizen? Are we responsible in contributing to community, to the planet, to people? And how open and honest are we committed to moving the needle on those things? And so that looks like a variety of things at a lot of places, but at Vizient, we refer to those programs as corporate responsibility or corporate social responsibility. And all that means is like we're strategic in how we show up for people, places, and planet. Like, beautiful thing. And I am lucky that we show up through our business offerings that way, but also through our corporate lens that way. So kind of one half of my team focuses on the community impact side. So disaster relief, like how are we getting hospital supplies to Hawaii after that fire? That was one of the projects my team worked on. To volunteer engagements. Yeah, it's a very hard day, but
yeah,
rewarding.
of course.
Yeah. To volunteer projects. So we know that community care bleeds outside the four walls of a hospital. So we're committed to engaging, supporting social determinants of health within communities. So right now I'm like in Chicago working with a team member. She's engaging food pantries and community centers and shelters for the unhoused. I mean, everything you can possibly think of. And how are we lifting up and championing those causes? Because we know that our hospital partners depend on those agencies to provide the services they do. And then there's also this philanthropic investment side. So it's almost treated like a investment portfolio where we're doing about $1.3 million in contributions to nonprofits all over the country. And these are fantastic, fantastic partners like Jubilee Park that you saw in my bio, where we invested in their summer camps last summer, or their community clinic where they're doing mental health resources, as well as providing primary care for those who don't have access to a physician that accepts Medicare or Medicaid within a 25-mile radius, which when you're using public transportation, that's pretty significant. But and then I also oversee the sustainability side of our company. So our greenhouse gas emissions, how are we reducing waste at our events? Do we have recycling bins in our offices? Are we composting? Are we, and it's, challenging at times, but the biggest part of my job is bringing people along on that journey, like helping employees feel tied into that work, feeling like they contribute to that work, and then making them feel like they can see themselves in the impact as well. And what's so amazing, and we just calculated this, is 61% of employees at Vizient partake in our programs. And that is how deep it goes. So we have 5 days off to volunteer at any 501c3 of your choice. It could be international, it could be within the United States, but you get 5 days and 61% of employees. So it's not like a taboo thing. It's not like my team does it and maybe analysts do it and a VP doesn't. It is that ingrained in our culture that employees are taking the day off and going to contribute. And it's some days are puppies and some days are wildfires, but there's like always impact to be made. We have puppies in our office sometimes as like a serotonin release. Yeah.
Okay, maybe I
Valentine's
don't have the
Day.
best job in the world. Maybe I'll maybe reconsidering it. I have to bring my own dogs to work, so
There you go.
that's all right.
Yeah. We did it on Valentine's Day, and it was through a local no-kill shelter, and there was just 6 adorable puppies.
I don't know that I ever would have recovered from the dopamine boost. I don't know that it would have ever happened. It's just,
How
oh my God.
How could you?
Oh, die happy. Seriously. Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
I love
it's
this.
a pretty, it's a levels the playing field. Like everyone loves it. Yeah.
Yeah. If you don't like baby animals, I have a lot of questions. And like the
Little
first one is
trust issues with it.
the first one's who hurt you. Like, that's not cool. I wish you liked fluffy things. All right. One thing that I wanted to circle back on was how you were describing uh, ESG, right? About how because the thing that stuck with me, I have a background in law, and one of the big things is like corporations legally are treated like people to a certain extent. And so I
Mhm.
very much like this idea of ESG as kind of how a corporation is a good citizen, because there's a lot of rights that come with being considered a person. And
Yep.
there's also a lot of freedoms that come with that. And so I think it's really just as important that we focus on, what that means responsibility wise and what companies can actually do.
Yeah. And like if you think about it, like, so from your law background, from a risk standpoint, like what are the risks to the business that we can work to solve, whether that's upstream or downstream through that lens? So
Mhm.
we depend on hospitals to have water access. So therefore we should have water efficient products in every single one of our offices. Or we help our hospitals reduce their emergency room emissions rates. So, like, how are we powering care in communities where they're not going into the emergency room for malnutrition? It's like it's an additional lever to pull that's like just as strategic as the other parts of our business. And normally you see compassion fatigue, and
Mhm.
there's like lower rates of engagement, and that is untrue at Vizient. Like they're just as engaged in the work, which is really nice.
Yes. Oh, love, love, love to hear that. Okay. We've got about 7 minutes left. We do have a couple questions we're going to keep moving through, but I do want to save a little bit of time at the end so we can talk a little bit more about Vizient. Let's see here. Okay, one of the things we talked about was embracing authenticity. So um, when you are having having these conversations with employees or with coworkers, and you're trying to model the kinds of boundaries and the kind of stuff that you want people to feel like they can also model, has there been have there been have you had any issues navigating the difference between authenticity and oversharing? Because that, for me at least, like
Mm-hmm.
that is a hard boundary, right? It's not hard, it's a difficult one for me to navigate, right? Because I bring so much of who I am as a person to work. So for you, how do you navigate this?
Mm-hmm. Um, I mean, I listen to my gut a lot of the time. I think I probably dabble on oversharing quite a bit, like just naturally. Like I want to be an open book and ask, like, tell everyone everything all the time, and that
Mm.
doesn't need to happen. Like chances are if we had regular conversations, I would tell you what I talked to my therapist about a couple weeks ago. Like it would just be that transparent. And it's not because I think I'm oversharing. It's because like this is I show up as myself all the time.
Mhm.
Now I think as I've grown in my career and through parenthood and through just like life journey and caring for parents or whatever that may be, I think like reading the room and tailoring your audience, but also like a big part of that is like in my field, like acknowledging that like it's not about you. So I am very mindful of like when it is not my time to share my journey, and it is not about my experience on that topic. I mean, even this conversation, I said to my team this week, like I don't. I mean, it's a bit of an imposter syndrome. Like I don't feel like I like my journey is like it's good, but like it's not. There's so many more influential women or people or caregivers that could be sharing that story. But so I think that's like a healthy dose of a reality check, which I think is good. So be a dangerous thing if you didn't have that.
Oh yes, very dangerous. That kind
Yeah,
of that kind of confidence. I mean, phew, topple dictators with that.
was not born that way.
Oh, I love this. We're also getting a lot of people from the audience. They're asking if you have any resources that you utilize for parenting or for navigating, being a professional, working professional, while like being a parent and responsible for tiny humans.
Yeah.
Are there any sources like resources and stuff that you utilize?
Um, I I have a child in speech therapy. So I have one child who was born with hearing loss. So I subscribe to a lot of speech therapists just on Instagram or, in life. But I love stuff that is grounded in science. Like, I think there are so many parenting advice that I saw kind of even through pregnancy. Like, you can't eat sushi. It's like, well, then how does all of Japan have babies? This is what you're supposed to do. So there's like a huge amount of fear mongering that happens in those times. So there is an economics professor that I love named Emily Oster, and it's Oster. She was a professor at the University of Chicago, and she wrote a book like literally examining the white papers around pregnancy and caregiving. She has 3 books, and I have just like dug into all of them because like one of the statistics around, I think it was around sushi or deli meats. Like, it was from a research study done like in the 1820s, or from like the 1920s, rather 1920s. And it's like, of course that's flawed because it was the 1920s.
100
like,
years ago.
And they don't tend to do research studies on pregnant women. So it's just like there's all these restrictions that aren't actually in place. Like, it's just a rule because everybody's been saying it's a rule for so long.
Mm-hmm.
And I think just as a core part of my job, challenging the status quo is kind of like right there in it. And so I tend to apply that to parenthood as well. The other book I really like is Whole Brain Child, which I think is like a phenomenal book. And then the one I'm reading right now is called No Drama Discipline. It was recommended to me by a children's therapist, and it's really good emotion first. Like, all emotions are healthy, all behaviors aren't healthy. So it like kind of separates those two things, because I'm trying to be really mindful, particularly raising 2 young boys. Like, your emotions are okay and they're a good thing. But my favorite parenting hack that I recently just gifted somebody is on Etsy. You can find these really beautiful pronoun stickers where, say you have a favorite book like Peter Rabbit from as a child, you can start changing the pronouns in some of those books to reflect whatever type of value system you have at home. I know, isn't that beautiful?
I love this.
So beautiful. And so it's one of the gifts I give at baby showers. But
that's a good one.
And it's so like you don't have to limit yourself on like a favorite book you had growing up, even if it doesn't like reflect your identity or the identity of your children.
Yeah.
It's like such an easy solve, like while the world catches up,
Yes,
gratefully
yes.
and grantedly, there's so many good books out there now for kids that reflect it's just remarkable. Like, my 3-year-old, 4 in a couple months, is learning that he could like anyone he wants to like, and at 3 years old.
Wonderful.
So I have way too much hope in them, way too much hope in that how they're going to save all of us.
Oh, they better. I'm telling you, Gen Z and Gen Alpha they're built different. They're built different, and I cannot wait to see as it goes through.
It's like, I cannot wait for them to be my boss.
Oh my! I'm telling you, the amount of like millennial managers we're starting to see is fabulous. And don't get me wrong, I love my other millennials. I'm squarely in millennial territory, very elder there. But yeah, like, I am very excited to see the changes that come when we are dealing with people who have different and more expectations for their workspaces, for their lives even. I think that's great. All right, we have almost run out of time. I'm so sorry. I'm usually a little bit better on time here, but we were just having such a great time. Thank you so much to everybody for joining us. Now, before we go, I just want to say a huge thank you, Jennifer, to you. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to be here with us and to share your expertise as well as all those great recommendations. So thank you so much. I really hope we get to do this again.
Thank you.
All right, y'all, for everybody that joined us today, thank you so much. We really appreciate seeing all of your smiling faces for those of us that, or those of you that joined us today. And we really appreciate that you took time out of your day to be here with Power to Fly and Vizient. We know that you have a lot of options when it comes to events like this, so we very much appreciate that you chose to spend time with us today. Now, don't forget, Vizient is hiring. We shared their link in the chat a couple times. Check out their company page on powertofly.com. Once you're there, especially if you're actively interested in Vizient and you don't see anything right this second that's like, that one, I got to apply to that one right now, make sure that you tap the follow button. It's pink, it's at the top of their company page. What that's going to do is it's going to put you on Vizient's follow network. That's going to allow you, allow us to change their English. We're going to allow you to let the Vizient team know that you are interested in working with them even before you fill out a job application or anything like that. And then it's also going to allow us to keep Vizient on your radar, because we're going to let you know when they post new roles. So let us kind of take the weight off of you in your job search and make this a little bit easier on you. Now, if this was your first Power to Fly event, I sincerely hope it will not be your last. And if you are one of our frequent flyers, thank you so much for joining us. We love, love, love seeing your familiar names and faces in the chat as well. So thank you all so much for joining us. That's going to bring us to an end. So enjoy the mood music, and we'll keep this channel open for a couple minutes, and then we will be good to go. So until next time, y'all, thank you so much for joining us. Bye. Feeling grateful.